Okay, this is the second part of the session today. And Laura, who I will introduce more fully in a second, got in touch with me to say that she didn't feel able to give the talk that she had originally planned to talk. And we had a conversation about what she might do in place of that, because the reason she gave was a very good reason. And it's a reason I think that we have all encountered. So I will just briefly introduce Laura to you. Laura Gelfand is Professor of Art History at Utah State University. Informed by art historical methods, her research engages the vibrant interdisciplinary world of animal studies with a particular focus on canids. And her essay, The Wolf at the Door and the Dog at Our Feet, was published in Home Culture's special issue on animals and home in 2021. And she's just completed a chapter on human-animal interactions and art for the Handbook on Human-Animal Interactions, Interventions and Anthrozoology, which is forthcoming from Routledge this year. And as this shows, her talk is here today called Driven to Tears, Interrogating Care Within the Context of Animal Studies. So Laura, I'll hand over to you now.
Thank you so much, Erica, and thank you for the opportunity to do this. This is a little bit unusual for me. And thank you to both the previous speakers. I feel like Emily and Monica, your talks lead into this really beautifully. So I will keep my remarks really short in the hope that we can have a long discussion about this. So as Erica mentioned, I'll be giving a different paper than I had originally planned, one that I don't conceive of as a traditional academic paper. I've never tried anything like this before in a professional setting. So I'm really grateful to Erica, and I hope that this all goes okay. So let me move forward. So Maria Puig de la Bella Casa, who seems to be the patron saint of this session, is eloquent in her description of the complexities surrounding care and caring when it comes to the more than human world. Care manifests itself differently in different contexts. Care stands in opposition to carelessness and casual cruelty, and our understanding of care changes when it's applied to humans, animals, the environment, our relationships, and just about everything else. Care is not simple, it is complex and nuanced, and it can produce positive and negative outcomes, which is primarily what I'd like to explore with you today before opening this up to what I hope will be a lively discussion. The billboard I'm showing on this slide is one that appeared in the Western US earlier this year, and it was funded by one of the many nonprofit organizations that have fought long and hard to have wolves listed as endangered, to protect them once they are listed, and to relist them after they have regularly been delisted by conservative US presidents. Wolves were initially placed on the endangered species list in 1978. They were most recently delisted for purely political reasons during the final chaotic days of the Trump administration. As a result of their delisting in February of 2021 in Wisconsin, over 215 wolves were killed in just 3 days. This was more than double the state's hunting quota. 6 Native American tribes sued the state for violating their treaty-protected rights. After protracted court battles, gray wolves were relisted on February 10th, 2022. The federal judge in the case found that the US Fish and Wildlife Services, quote, failed to adequately analyze and consider the impacts of partial delisting and of historical range loss on the already listed species, end quote. However, wolves in the Northern Rockies remain unprotected, thanks to laws passed by the state legislatures in Idaho and Montana. In nearby Colorado, a recent ballot initiative to bring wolves back in 2020 passed, and then in response, the legislature in my home state of Utah passed a constitutional amendment banning wolves from the state. They did so just in case Utah voters started to get any crazy ideas. Wolves are popular enough and polarizing enough to sell magazines, and investigative journalists have published recent articles in The New Yorker and Rolling Stone that describe how politics is inspiring some hunters who were killing wolves in Idaho and Montana last season. For example, during the last hunting season, hunters killed 27 wolves just outside Yellowstone National Park, including one entire pack. They used lures to trick the wolves into crossing the park boundary where they could legally kill them. These were not problem wolves. They were not wolves with a taste for livestock. People come to Yellowstone from around the world hoping to see these wolves in the wild. The wolves these hunters killed were famous. They had nicknames, they had radio collars, and they had become charismatic emblems of an environmental success story. Killing wolves is meant to act in much the same way that lynching has in this country. It is a show of force, a way to gin up the base and stoke fear among those who are being targeted. In the case of wolves, it is environmentalists who are being targeted, while hunters are rewarded financially by industrial ranchers, the gun lobby, and the PR and advertising operations that promote these businesses. Those who oppose the presence of wolves in the wild used nativist tropes, such as saying that these are Canadian wolves, not wolves from the US. Such divisive racist strategies have proven to be effective for centuries. Even though bounties are not technically legal, several far-right groups offered them this year, and successful hunters used social media to promote the profitability of killing wolves for large appreciative audiences. I'm not going to show you the bodies of wolves stacked up like cordwood that I've run across in doing this research, but I have seen some really horrific images. One of the things that new legislation in Idaho and Montana did was allow hunters to use previously banned methods to kill wolves. This included going into dens to kill pups, using motorized vehicles, leg traps, poison, you name it. Everything and anything was fair game. This gave hunters new freedom and permission to go after wolves as aggressively as possible, with bounties rewarding them for being as vicious as possible. Thanks to all this new regulation, social media, bounties, and more, wolf hunters, who are almost all men, were given a grand stage on which to perform their toxic masculinity for one another and the world. This performance is, in essence, a kind of virtue signaling, and the signals they are sending are easily interpreted by those who approve of their actions and those who don't. Paige Williams' article in The New Yorker focused on a hunter named McDermott, who claimed to have made over $10,000 last year in bounties from the wolves he killed. He further capitalized on this by producing videos of his wolf killing exploits and posting them to his YouTube channel, where they were viewed thousands of times. The New Yorker article emphasized that McDermott was not just incentivized by financial rewards, he was equally inspired by the knowledge that his violent actions shocked and offended liberals and environmentalists, knowing that someone like me, knowing that someone like me cares about wolves makes murdering them a vastly more appealing pastime for someone like him. The paper I initially proposed was meant to explore this specific issue and try to sort out how or if it would be possible to change this dynamic in some way, since caring about wolves only seems to amplify the desire that people like McDermott have to destroy them. One of the main problems I encountered when trying to write this paper as I first proposed it is that I am both emotionally and physically too close to this killing. Logan, where I live, and you can see the little green dot, Logan, where I live, is just a few miles from Idaho. We actually drive there to buy cheaper beer. Yellowstone National Park is also just a few hours away, relatively close in terms of distances in the West. So try as I might, I could not get sufficient distance from this problem to study it without strong emotional responses kicking in. The overwhelming nature of my response was further complicated by my ongoing and increasing worries about political polarization in the US, the war in Ukraine, climate change, our students who all seem to be suffering from post-pandemic mental illness. All these things played a part in making it impossible for me to write an objective essay about caring about wolves. As academics, we are trained to be objective and to treat the subjects we research dispassionately. This is so firmly ingrained that even the act of writing these brief notes, in which I'm foregrounding my response and myself, has been surprisingly difficult. Yet some of the most interesting writers working in and outside academia today integrate their emotional selves into the intellectual fiber of their work. and the results can be particularly powerful when they jettison the pretense of objectivity. What I found particularly difficult in trying to write the paper I originally intended was that I could not think about the pleasure that wolf hunters get from their actions without starting to feel as if the entirety of the human race and every other species is, quite simply, fucked. Further, I am not convinced that my caring about wolves and what happens to them does much good. Certainly sending money to organizations like the Center for Biological Diversity, the Humane Society, and the Sierra Club, to name just a few, is one way to make a difference. But the future fate of wolves is really in the hands of the US legal system. Besides caring enough to donate generously, what positive contribution can I make with the surplus of care that I feel for wolves? And with that, what I'd like to do is open this up for a broader discussion. I have a few questions here to get us going. I'm sure almost everyone here, if not everyone, has had this sort of experience. And I'm wondering sort of how you've dealt with things like, what does care and caring mean within the context of animal studies? How is it different from other studies? Are there those, we're in the humanities. Are we supposed to maintain a scientific distance? Is it necessary? Is it positive? Is it even possible? Is being emotionally engaged with the work make it stronger? Does it weaken it? There are all of these questions and all different discussion points, and I know that you all will have some as well, but that was really sort of where I ended up with this, and I'll be really interested to hear what everyone else has to say and hear feedback from all of you. And thank you, Erica, for letting me do this.
That's brilliant. Thank you so much, Laura. I am stopping the recording.